In the Every Acre Counts program, marginal lands are those cropland acres that are not consistently profitable. Most farmers know roughly where these acres are on their property, and it's roughly those that are too wet, too dry, too eroded, or too salty.
So on your farm, what would you consider examples of those marginal lands?
Saline spots and just eroded soils probably that don't have the organic matter levels or good black topsoil to them. So that just don't, we got some gravel spots on mine too that we just got to look at them a little different to maybe the traditional crops of corn and soybeans and some of the other small grains. Maybe we need to look at other crops to get growing on there.
We have a lot more that has, drainage issues than being too droughty. I mean, we have some areas that are drought prone, but not so much. We usually don't either don't rent them or just leave them in grass in the first place. But you have some of this productive ground, and there's some drainage issues in areas that should just still be wetlands. And it's just, if you see cattails, at least in a normal year, that's a pretty good indicator that you're not going to be very productive, if you try to farm it, because you're just going to be fighting. It's just going to be a net loss all the time. You're just going to be,
Sure.
And it's just better off to put them back into natural habitat. If you're losing $100, $150 an acre every year and putting those inputs out there, it's just a waste of inputs, and it's just a lot better to put it back. And then once you put the habitat back in there, it starts using more water too. So, and it's just so many good things about it. And then we like to make them square because square edges are a lot easier to farm around than circles. That's one of the things. We just got tired of farming around in circles all the time. So we got an area that's got a whole bunch of wetlands. We just like to square it off and put it back into native grass. And
it did take longer for us to figure out if you only farm a piece of land 5 years out of 10, you're probably not going to get too far ahead on it. And that's where it all started, mostly because the Tonka soils with the prairie pothole, and first of all, it's not good soil, 58 PI, and so it wasn't all that difficult to figure out that we didn't want to farm that stuff. Volume is a great thing in agriculture, and everybody thinks that way, but the fact of the matter is more of a bad thing isn't good, and so we've done a really good job of making our farm more profitable because we just don't farm the bad stuff.
So when did you start seeing the salty areas, or have they always been occurring in the area?
1993, after that wet year is when, we didn't have the salinity issues before that.
Okay.
But our rainfalls, I think what I saw that in the last 80 years, we've gained 3 inches of precip in a month of more frost-free days. So that's a huge climate change. So it's going to change the way that you have to operate. That was probably one of the hardest things to realize is when you grow up in the South Dakota and it's just dry. You're just used to always trying to save water. But you can do too good a job if you don't cycle that water. There's so much of it gets wasted. If your ground only holds 8 inches, and if you have a period after small grain harvest and you end up there's 16 inches of precip till the next crop starts using it, you just wasted 8 inches. You need to utilize that with the cover crops or something.
So, can you talk about the crops that you grow and the livestock that you raise?
Primarily beef farm. Cow-calf operation. We finished all the cattle. Cattle are all sold on grain yield standpoint. We grow corn, soybeans, alfalfa, and whatever else might come to my mind. It used to be strictly corn and beans. Hey, you got square fields. You got to make everything a square field, big acres. Now I'm transitioning away from that because that's not the land that I have.
because you've got salty soils. And so talk about how you've battled those, or you've lived with those, or however you want to describe it.
I'm actually embarrassed because since '92 I watched a lot of this happen and didn't know I was doing anything wrong, and I don't think I was doing anything wrong. But there was just differences that that happen. You know, new technologies come into the farm, you adopt them. Yield goals change, precip levels change. The size, every one of our fields will change in size year to year. We've had times where we've had 35% sloughs in water. We could keep people busy hunting pheasants. I used to have people I could send a party out in a section and I wouldn't have to see them the rest of the day. I got used to trying new things with working with Jim Miller, Precision Soil, and in the process I start seeing small differences. I take pictures. Probably the biggest thing is for me is having the cell phone in my pocket.
So today we're standing in the middle of one of the zones you've identified. So could you talk a little bit about this zone and this problem we're having out here?
So if you look at our zone-based system, we have 24 different soil zones that we've generated in delineating the different soil types in this part of South Dakota. If you look at the salt-affected zone that we're sitting in here, this is what we'd call our zone 10. Our zone 10 is our salt-affected surface, salt-affected surface soil, very limited productivity from a standpoint that the high salt level on the soil surface is limiting any productivity out here. And the reason it's limiting the productivity is we can't get anything to grow out here from an agronomic standpoint. So the salt issue that we're dealing with today really started in the 1990s. That's when we got them above average precip event years. We raised the water table. When you raise the water table, you bring the salts up to the surface, and that's what we're dealing with now. So now it's how are we managing these salt affected soils? That's kind of the next step here. So if you look at this database we've generated out, and I'm just throwing in Spink and Beetle County for this part of in the Jim River watershed. Right now, roughly 4% of our acres are salt affected, and what I mean by salt affected, it has a high salt level in the top 6 inches, and thus it's impeding crop production at a severe level. But the scary part is, if you look at our database, roughly 15% of the acres that we manage have a subsoil that's salt affected. What I mean by the subsoil, that's 6 to 24 inch depth, and that we can see that 4% acres out there. You can drive by all these fields and you can see that 4% acres that we have that salt level high in the surface, but because we can tell there's limited growth out there. But the scary part is them 15% acres out there that have that subsurface salinity. Them are the ones where maybe in a great growing season where you got plenty of moisture, you're never too wet, you're never too dry, them 15% acres don't show up much. But boy, in a wrong year, they just explode. I mean, 2019 was a very difficult year for us out here. We just got too much water.
Like so many in this area, if you ask any producer what their most marginal lands are, it's got to be the borderline, the saline areas, and the buffer areas around the deep water holes. It's something that they're there. Producers look at them in the dry years and they say, we can make it work. It's been farmed in the past. And then if you get into an exceptional rainfall period, then that makes you realize that you're not doing a good job of managing that at all. And so we've made a conscious effort over the last several years to really get after our management of the marginal lands. That was a primary driver of us to cooperate with Pheasants Forever and also with Every Acre Counts to just say, to reach out to you folks about what type of resources are there. We've known what they are, but we've always kind of thought with the precision ag setup that we have, we should be utilizing that better on the marginal lands. We know what we can do to gain top end on yield and stuff if we employ these practices the way we ought to. But the payday is in the marginal lands with precision ag, in my opinion. And that's where we've done a lot of work. We have a lot more work to go, and the amount of analysis that's been done already by the two groups I mentioned has been absolutely instrumental for us to say we have access to all this data. Let's really dial in the analytics now and see what we can do with that.
So anything besides saline that would be a trouble area out this way?
Some wider areas, I suppose.
Well, wet, but yeah, those two kind of go hand in hand, but it's not. I mean, I got areas that I just, for drainage purposes, just extend the grass out. I don't have the, saline wasn't an issue. It was just being able to cross it. You always get stuck in the same spots because it's always wet, and if you can get grass growing there and cross it, with the precision, you just shuts everything off, and you still farm it straight back and forth. You don't have to turn.
So precision allows you to do that, to cross over grassed areas and continue on the other side, and you're happy with how that works.
Yeah, and I mean the sprayers too now are starting to get individual nozzles even, so they could trace it as precise as you can, spend the time to draw the boundaries. So,
okay.
But planters shut off. That's row by row for corn, and a lot of beans and stuff like that.
I feel like a responsibility to clean up some of the messes that I've made, I and my brother, for the next generation and hopefully following after that. And I know we have certain pieces of ground that I'll comment to Alex that this used to be some of our best dirt that we farmed, and now it's some of our worst. But it's because of continual, too many soybeans in the rotation, we feel, and just not enough organic matter being thrown back into the soil.
And kind of add on to some of that, we've seen the weaknesses. So in our landscape, we're very flat around here, and excess water is a problem when we can't use it efficiently. And we've just started to see the alkaline salty areas start to progress more into the field and get bigger because we haven't been using the water efficiently enough within a corn and soybean rotation. It dives down into the soil health principles that you guys all talk about, and using the water, having cover and diversity. We know we need to increase our water infiltration and use it efficiently, and develop a cropping system that can be resilient and work hand in hand with the weather instead of fighting against it.